Good evening, everybody. This is Gardening Warrior Q, and this is a very large sheet pan of cheddar bacon ground beef. It's 3 pounds of ground beef and a tablespoon each of onion powder, chili powder, cumin, and garlic powder. 1 cup of shredded cheese, 2 room temperature eggs beaten, and roughly 8 ounces of crispy baked bacon. That's the bacon right there. That's the cheese. And then you just mix it all together in your bowl. Make sure the eggs are well incorporated and all the seasonings are mixed, the bacon and cheese, but just blend it with your hands or mix it with your hands until it's well incorporated. You do not want to overwork your meat or it will get tough. After I had my daughter mix it together, I pressed it into this very large pan. I don't know what size pan this is. It's my mom's and it's just huge. It's just big enough to fit in my oven. So I squished it down there, made sure it's about probably half an inch deep. You always want to make sure that the edges are not, or the meat's not right to the edge. And that way when the grease comes out or any juices, it'll go around in this little layer here and you won't overflow your pan. So now we're going to stick it in the oven, 375 degree preheated oven, and I'm going to cook it for 20 minutes and then I'm going to check on it again. So, like I said, 375 degrees. Be sure you set your timer. You don't want to overcook this. What we're going to use this for is some hamburgers and, well, actually, they're going to be sliders. And then we're going to also make some into, or wrap some in burritos and eat them that way. Because that's how my girls like to do it. Next, we're going to get started on our actual taco meat. So, all the ground beef we're using tonight is only 27% fat. And the rest is lean ground beef. And this is a third of a 10-pound roll of that ground beef. This is how it looks in the raw. No seasonings, no eggs added. We are going to add eggs to this. These are actually going to be meatballs. So we're going to season this like you would maybe meat for spaghetti sauce. And I'll show you how I do that. Alright, so like I said, this is actually going to be the Italian meatballs. And so what I'm going to do is I've already cracked 1 egg. That's room temperature egg. And roughly a tablespoon of my Italian seasoning. I ain't gonna measure. Measure with your heart, my friend. Next, we're going to put in roughly a tablespoon of onion powder. Again, measure with your heart. That looks good. And roughly the same amount of garlic powder. You can never have too much garlic. And roughly a third of a cup of grated Parmesan. Usually I have the Parmesan and Romano mix, but apparently Walmart substituted regular Parmesan. So we'll use what we got. Now we're going to mix this up with our hands. Okay, so we have our roughly 3 pounds of ground beef mixed with the seasoning, 1 egg cracked in there. I always do my eggs at room temperature, so I let them sit out a little bit. I also like to preheat my pans. This is a 12-inch copper pan, and I've got my burner on 4. This is an electric stove. I hate cooking with electric. I was taught how to cook on a gas stove, and I just can't really get the hang of this electric thing. But I've got it pretty much just a little closer to low than I do medium. And I'm going to let this heat up just a little bit before I stick my meatballs into the pan. But you can go ahead and form your meatballs. Decide how big you want your meatballs. I'm going to make mine roughly about an inch. Usually I use my ice cream scooper, but I can't figure out where my kids have put it. So I'm just going to have to, rough it. Because I really can't find the ice cream scooper anywhere. It didn't get put back where it belongs, and that's how things happen in my house. So, alright, well, we're just going to wing it then. Oh, yes, that looks beautiful. What you want is you want the sides to be pulled away. Now you can see where these automatically pretty much made their own little patties and how they're slightly brown on the edges. That's what you want. If you have a meat thermometer, mine kind of broke, then you want to test and make sure it's at least 160 in the middle pieces here. But I worked in the deli for quite a few years, and I can tell you that that is done. And it may look kind of gross right now because of, all the grease and stuff, but we're going to take care of that too. Now, what I was saying about the pan being hot, the reason we want the pan hot and we do not want the meatballs very close together is because we're just browning these. We're just getting a little sear on them there. So you want to be able to take your meatball, and which is kind of hard with one hand, by the way, just in case you're wondering, turn it over. When this part gets nice and brown on the outside, but not fully done on the inside, that's when you want to turn off your heat. When all the meatballs are just slightly brown on the outside. All right. Well, our meatballs are mostly brown. You really just want them where they're not falling apart. We're going to take this. You notice that my pan is empty. We're going to take all this stuff here and move it away from where we were going to put the meatballs. Because I just realized I don't have any paper towels. And usually what I would do is put them into a separate pan and let them soak. Or not soak, good Lord. Let them drain the grease off. Since I cannot do that right now, I'm going to put them over here, out of the way, and let some of the grease get off of there before we change them into the pan, the cooling rack. And like I said, now you can cook these all the way through and still freeze them. That's not a problem. Then you just reheat them. And like the microwave, after you thaw them, you're good to go. But I want to put these into a sauce. So I just want them browned because I'm going to bake them at a later date. But that's one step you don't have to worry about now. They really want to get up in that grease. Y'all see that? Now, because this is lean beef, there's not that much grease in there. And now we're going to get ready for the second batch of meatballs, which I've already started actually. So we're going to place these about an inch apart into this frying pan, which is now on pretty much low because electric holds the heat really good. And I'm going to show you what happened to the meat that was right here. So that meat came out absolutely gorgeous. See how that's cooked? Now all I have to do with these is put the longer pieces like this into one of these burritos, and the rest are going to go into my freezer, and they'll be sliders or hamburgers, whichever. And this is just a cooling rack, and it's letting the grease drain off of the hamburgers. The hamburgers, or, sliders, whatever it is, the hamburger pie, as I call it, is a little greasier because it did have the bacon in it. The meatballs do as well. Oh, no, the meatballs do not. Just this meat mix here had the shredded cheese and the bacon. So I want to let this drain, get most of that grease off before I package it up. Okay, so I turn these up to medium because I want them more brown on the outside and less done on the inside. These are less browned on the outside than I want, but they're more done on the inside. They taste good, don't get me wrong. They taste real good. But I want more of a sear on them. But I don't want them to get this done. I'm just going to move them around. See how that's still pink like that? That's fine. But I want it brown like that. That. Because like I said, I'm going to put these in a sauce. Now, if you're not putting them in a sauce and you're just going to defrost them or eat them right away, cook them all the way, please. At least to 160. However, because I'm putting these, I'm going to let them cool and then put them in the freezer. I want them more brown and less cooked on the inside. That way they'll hold up better in the sauce that I'm going to make. And they'll hold up better in the freezer. Never put hot food in the freezer. You always want to put it in the fridge first. Let it cool off to at least just below room temperature before you move it into the freezer. But we're going to cover that too. Now, these are looking real good with the brown. I'm really happy with this. So, because it is nice and brown on the outside, I'm going to go ahead and start taking some of these out. Let it drain a little. Put it over there. I might put some of those that are a little less done than I like back in here. You just want them brown on all sides. So just keep moving them around so they don't burn. But again, like I said, you don't want them fully, I don't want mine fully cooked. You can fully cook yours if you're going to eat them right away. Please do. Or if you're not going to put them in a sauce like I am and then bake them, then please feel free. Get them to a full 160 degrees. But for the purpose I'm using them for, I just want them browned on the outside so that they're not overcooked in the sauce. But you also don't want them burnt. This one looks real nice. And that one's not cooked right there. So we're just gonna roll them all over. You also don't want to play with them so much that they fall apart. So be very gentle when you're doing this. I'm showing you that one because it's ready. In fact, I think they're pretty much all ready from what I can tell. Yes. So. Beautiful. Look at that. Now we're ready to get them out of this pan onto this non-grease surface or less grease surface to let them soak. Or let them drain, not soak. It's the opposite of what we want. We do not want them soaking in grease. And I think I'm just going to leave the other ones okay. Or call them okay. And be careful, because now it's starting to get real hot. See how it's popping like that? Before I put any more in, I'm going to let this grease cool down a little. And try and get this adjusted down to low. There we go. Probably just move it because electric holds the heat really good on them burners. So we're gonna let that cool down, let the burner cool down, and then we'll do the rest of our meat. Alright, so we are finally have got the drainer pan cleared off. The hamburger, bacon cheddar hamburgers in there. Now, because it's still frosty like that, I'm not going to close this bag just yet because your meat will get kind of funky. It'll get soggy. You don't want that. So these are the meatballs that are already made. And these are the ones that are still cooking. I've turned them down to low because my dog has to go to the bathroom. And I don't want my meatballs to burn. So I'm going to take a little break. Take him out real quick. And then I'll be back. And I'll probably turn those up when I get back. Oh, yes. Look at those beautiful brown Italian meatballs. All ready for a lovely meatball sub, or to be put in some marinara, or in my children's cases, with the exception of Maggie, she's a marinara girl. She does not do the Alfredo. However, Ellie and Essie only eat the Alfredo sauce. So, I make the sauce, and then they choose what they want to stick over their pasta and put their meatballs in. but they're all done. So that's probably 2 meals right there that are at least started. The sauce, easy to throw together. The marinara sauce, I have canned already. So all we have to do is open it, heat it, stick it over the pasta that'll already be cooked. No, it'll be cooked the day of. But then we just put the sauce in it or over it after we heat it up, and they put their meatballs on it and everybody's happy. Or you get the marinara sauce and you stick it on some French garlic bread or Italian garlic bread and have a sub, whichever. Or sometimes they eat it plain. We never know what mood they're going to be in, but at least the meatballs are done. And that is the hardest part. Now, I am going to save this grease. I have a container just for beef grease, but I have to strain all that off. So I got to let this cool down. So I'm going to put it on my table with a mat under it and let that cool while we get our taco seasonings into our meat for our tacos and our burritos. Okay, we only eat burritos here, or soft tacos. Now, as anybody in my home will tell you, I hate waste. So, what I'm going to do with this after this cools a little more, I am going to strain it. I will use all these bits here. I'll probably put them in the freezer, and I will use those as well as those in a gravy. And the beef grease will go into my jar after it's cooled and be used for another meal. Or eggs, or, whatever the kids want to use it for. I always put my grease in the refrigerator, so I have to let that jar cool off as well, or warm up as the grease is cooling off. And then I'll strain it and put it in here, but that'll be a little later in the video. Let's get started on our other meat. Alright, so what I just did was I took my spoon and I emptied as much of that goodness from that pan into the strainer here. Usually I use a smaller container or a smaller pot. Now, when I went to get the meat that I thought I was going to make just plain taco meat with, I realized I had already put the 2 eggs in it. So I accidentally used the meat that was supposed to be for the meatballs that I had to put an egg in. I just realized that I used the wrong meat for the meatballs. So, the other meat is not, that I just took out, is not seasoned yet. However, it does have 2 eggs in it. So, I'm going to go ahead and make a taco meatloaf, and I'll show you how I do that while this slowly strains out of my strainer, leaving all the good bits behind. I did the same with my frying pan. I got as much of the bits off as I could. And what I usually do after I strain these is I will put a little bit of hot water in them, let them come up to a boil and get the rest of the good stuff off. And I actually have a container that I put that in, and I use that for like gravies and stuff like that. So, I see my daughter already seasoned this, and I know for a fact that this is cumin and garlic powder and onion powder and 1 packet of chipotle taco seasoning. So, I must have already told her to do that. But I know that because I can smell the seasoning and tell you that. But there's the 1 little egg right there. And I had her do this earlier. We just couldn't record because my other daughter was being a little anxious and making a lot of noise. So we had to stop what we were doing until she went to bed, which is why my house is quiet except for my background music. So all I'm going to do now is just mix this. You want to get that egg down there and squish it up. And you just want to mix it until everything is incorporated. I didn't get to show you this last time, but you want to knead that egg in there because that holds everything together. And it also adds a little juiciness to it. Some people put milk in theirs. I don't like that. It kind of grosses me out. So this is how I do it. I usually also put breadcrumbs in there, but I don't feel like moving a bunch of stuff, and someone used the last the last of the breadcrumbs. That taco seasoning is really strong. That's why I'm coughing. So, all right. I'm going to put this camera down and finish mixing this together so I don't mix it too much and make my meat tough. Alright, so after most of the grease is drained out, it's going to be a little thick. That's fine. That's what you want because this is for gravy. And we're just going to spoon that into that container. Want to get all that goodness out of there. Or at least as much as you can without it falling back into the grease. Like it just did. Luckily, because this was a lower fat content meat, there's really not that much grease. So that's what that looks like. And that's just the drippings from the meats that I've made so far. That's cooled off enough. I can put the lid on it. It doesn't steam up. It's ready to go in the fridge. Now about this. Usually I'd have a clean sink, but I had already done some other meal prep before. See how thick that is and concentrated? That's ready to go into the jar. There are little drippings in there, but that's alright. So let's scoop this up and put it in our jar now. And sometimes the grease sets up too fast. But I have my oven set to 375. And this should melt down soon enough because this is where the heat exhaust comes from. So this jar is warm enough. And that should melt down enough to go in there. In fact, I think I see that some already has, so that's good. While this meatloaf is cooking, the taco meatloaf, this will melt down and go into the jar, so I'm not really worried about that. If, however, this happens to you, and you're not cooking, so your stove's not hot, go ahead and stick it in the microwave. That's all right, as long as you're not using any metal, of course. Just put it on like 10-15 second increments. Cover it so it doesn't explode all over the place. And every 10 to 15 seconds, whichever you choose to do, just stir it up with like a knife and push some of it down there. And that should get it flowing enough where it can go down and you won't have to worry about it. But that's only if you're not running a hot stove. Just put it next to the stove. On the stove. It'll heat up enough while the other meat is cooking to go down. Alright, I also just realized that my aluminum pans that I use for my meal prep and I ordered that was supposed to be here before 7 o'clock has not come yet. So it probably got delivered to somebody else. And Amazon can refund my money. So because of that, all I have is this glass pan. Usually I would put a mason jar in the middle of one of the roaster pans, but because this is so small, I think we're just going to make do with it. And because I am scooping it out with a slotted spoon, I should be all right. As far as the grease will just, like I said, this is a low-fat meat. So there's really not that much grease, as y'all saw. There wasn't much grease at all. So I think I'm just going to put it in this loaf pan. I have one other small round loaf pan. And because I'm scooping it out to put onto tacos and burritos, we should be all right. I am not going to grease the pan because there's enough grease in that. You don't need to grease a pan when you're doing a meatloaf or working really with meat, like ground beef or, ground meat like that. So we're not going to do that. Usually I line the pan with aluminum. So let me get that started. All right, we now have one neatly aluminum lined casserole pan. Let me put this meat in here and I'll come back. Let me just show you. I just take handfuls of meat. I just press them in there. That's all it is. Just press it in. Now usually I'd have the mason jar right in here in the bigger roaster pans, and that will suck all the grease out. After you take it out of the oven, the cold air will actually cause a vacuum and suck the grease out of the meatloaf for you. But it is, like I said, a lower fat meat. And this is a really small pan. So we're not going to do that. And this is taco meat. So it's going to, be like ground beef anyways. I mean, like crumbled beef anyways. So I'm really not concerned. Just press it on in there. And like I said, my oven's set to 375 already. Just make sure there's no like air pockets or anything. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I like to leave a good inch or two. So that the grease doesn't really explode out the top and get all over the pan. Because I just don't feel like cleaning it. So, I mean, there will still be cleanup, but it won't be nearly as bad as if I had not lined the pan with aluminum foil. Okay, so I've got this deeper casserole dish, and I press the meat in. You still, like I said, you don't want to play with it too much or it'll get too stiff. And you don't want your meat to be stiff. You want it to be nice and light and, hold together, but you don't want it to be stiff so that's like rubber or anything gross. All right, now they're both ready to go into the oven. Again, preheated at 375 degrees. And for these smaller loaves, I'm just going to put them in there for 30 minutes. And then I'll check them. What you want, again, is your meatloaf to be 160 degrees. Internal temperature right in the middle here. And then it'll be done. So let's put it in the oven. And I'll be right back. All right. I put my meat on the middle rack. So since it was already on the middle rack, I just left it there. Both loaves are in the oven, and we're going to shut it up. See, that's already started to melt down. Timer. 30 minutes. Here we go. And start. Don't worry, I'm not going to sit there and make you watch that disgusting stuff blop down into there. But in 30 minutes, I bet it'll be almost done. Also, it is very important if you're sticking things in the freezer that you label what it is, how to thaw it, and how to cook it. I put bake 350 for 15 minutes or add to sauce to reheat, simmer 20 minutes. This is for our Italian meatballs, obviously. I am a member of the Freezer 101 Club, and they do, I'll put the link in the description below, but you can actually, they will give you the recipes on how to assemble everything into a freezer bag, and then you can print out the directions to put onto your bag, telling you how to defrost it, how to cook it. If it's for a slow cooker, an instant pot, it'll give you all those directions. And you can actually print it out on a label and stick it on there, or in my case, a piece of paper, and stick it in a mini baggie and just put it inside the bag, which is what I do a lot of times. So I'm going to bag up those meatballs. Something very important to keep in mind, especially if you're freezing your meatballs, is to put them in one layer flat like this, and then lay them in your freezer flat until they're frozen. And that way you can actually take out, if you only have one kid that wants meatballs or one person that wants meatballs, you can take out 3 or 4 and just, cook them in the microwave. Or you can take out the night before. If someone says, hey, I want this tomorrow, can we have this? And everybody else says, no, we don't want that. You can take out 3 or 4 meatballs, let them defrost overnight, and the next day just cook them the way you're supposed to, or just stick them in a frying pan and finish cooking them and heating them up with some sauce or whatever. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lay these flat in my little freezer up there and let them freeze overnight, and then I'll put them into the big freezer if my kids don't find them and eat them first. All right. So I've got 17 more minutes. I'm going to let this get up to a boil. That will also add to the warming process here. And I'm going to start cleaning up. I've got a dishwasher full of dishes. I'm going to get that started, so when I come back, you'll hear that running. I apologize. Stuff's got to be done, folks. So let me get on these dishes, and I'll be back in 17 minutes, which will be 1 minute to you guys. All right, so while I'm sitting here over this pan, I'm just brought it up. It's just simmering at the moment. But this will make your cleanup easy, and it makes sure that you're using every last bit of your resources. Get all the good stuff off. Get it off the bottom. In a little bit, this will be a little hotter, and I'll be able to get the rest of the stuff off at the bottom of this. I just wanted to show you this is what I do, and then I will use it to make gravy. I will actually add this after it's cooled down to the stuff that I strained off of the grease. And that way you can have a nice, thick, flavorful gravy. I like to use this, the gravy that I make like this for my stroganoff. My kids usually aren't really into gravy, but they'll eat it if it's like in a stroganoff or like a hamburger helper type meal, which I don't do. I make my own because that way I can control what goes into it. But I'll put some egg noodles or rigatoni, maybe even some elbows in with this, the gravy. And that way I don't have to use as much meat in the recipe and the kids don't feel gypped. And that way I can use more vegetables. Or I can even add I can my own pasta sauce, which is actually a mix of different vegetables, whatever I have left in the freezer that day when I decide to process everything. I'll make a big pot of my pasta sauce, which is whatever veggies I can find. And then I add 1 can of, I think it's a 6-ounce can of tomato paste to it. And the kids don't even know that all those lovely vegetables are in there. But that's another video for another time. I found a bunch of videos that I had on my other channel, which was Q Kitchen and Beyond. And most of my videos there were cooking. So I'm going to make a playlist of all of them. If you're interested, just let me know and I will let you peruse it at your leisure. Unfortunately, I was hacked by Google or from Google, and I am locked out of my own channel, which is why I became Gardening Warrior Q. Because now I focus primarily on gardening, whereas before I was focusing primarily on my cooking. Shed Wars came along and kind of changed all that, and now it's the global gardening homesteading community. So most of my stuff that I do nowadays is more gardening, which is why it's Gardening Warrior Q instead of the Q Kitchen and Beyond. But the channel is still up. If you want to go check it out, I'll leave a link down below, and you can find more cooking recipes there, or cooking videos there, most of which have the recipes attached in the description. It's so peaceful to just stir the pot, or the pan in my case, and get all that good stuff off the bottom. Plus, like I said, it makes cleanup so much easier. I think I've gotten most of it off of there. So I'm going to let this cool down. And I will be putting this into another glass jar. And that way I will have it for when I want to make my gravies. And once it's cooled, I can actually stick it in a zipper bag, get all the air out, and put it in my freezer. But again, that's another video for another time, because I'm not staying up that late to let this completely cool down. It's going to be cool enough to go into a jar. That's it. Just really want to get most of the dredges off, but you don't want to scrape your good copper pan because that would make you cry, and it looks like one of my kids has already scratched it with something. Of course, they have their own pots and pans, but they want to scratch up Mom's. Alright, like I said, I think I've got most of it off of there. Make sure you get all the sides. Get all that goodness. And this way you can save money on having to use things like bouillon, because it's already flavored with the beef. You do not want to let this cool down all the way, because then all that stuff will get stuck back to the bottom of your pan, but you don't want to heat it so much that it gets burnt on to the bottom of your pan, which seems to be what's happening here. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. of the heat. Oh, that smells so good. I got a whiff of it as it was going past me. All right, let me get a glass jar and I'll let that cool just a bit before I put it in there because we don't want to crack the jars. Woohoo! Got it all in the jar. And I've got 20 seconds to check on my meatloaf, so that's perfect timing. I'm not going to put the lid on this until it is cooled down considerably because you can make your jar explode. This is slowly melting down. I may have to stick it in the microwave because I'm ready for bed. Let's see what these meatloaves look like. All right, perfect. So this is what you want to look for if you don't have a meat thermometer. The slight browning, the pulling away from the edges there, that's wonderful. If you have a meat thermometer, I can tell this is still a little undone, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and leave it that way because I'm going to put it in the frying pan tomorrow to brown it up a little. So it's okay if you leave it like this. Partially cooked, that's okay. If you're going to finish cooking it in the frying pan, then it's okay to look like this. However, if you are not going to finish cooking it in the frying pan, if you are making a traditional meatloaf, you are going to want this meatloaf to be 165 degrees in the middle. So you're going to want to check that. And I can tell you just by looking at it how that pink is, that it's not done in the middle. But again, like I said, because I'm going to put it in the frying pan tomorrow, or whatever day I do my burritos, which will be tomorrow, that's okay, because I'm going to finish cooking it. But for tonight, that's just fine. We're going to let this cool down. I'm going to remove the meat from the containers. After it is cooled down, I just wanted you to see what it looks like right now. See all that pink? That's if you are going to cook it in the frying pan and finish cooking it, that's fine. However, if you're making a traditional meatloaf and you do not have a meat thermometer, here's what you need to do. That's actually quite beautiful. It's just this right here, this bloodiness right here is kind of concerning. If I wasn't going to put it in the frying pan. So get yourself a meat thermometer. It'll make your life so much better. I could easily cut into this right now because I am going to be taking it out. And yeah, see, it's still partially raw in there. So I'm actually think I'm going to go ahead and put this back in there because it's really a lot more raw than it needs to be. And I'm going to put it in there for another 20 minutes. That one's a lot deeper, so I don't know what this is going to look like. This one feels like it's mostly done. And it is mostly done. Okay, so this one we're going to leave out and let cool. This one I'm going to put in there for another 15-20 minutes. But you see how this one's much darker and it's pulled away from the edges a lot more? Yeah, that one's pretty much done. That's like, if you want a medium rare burger, this is what you're going to have, okay? However, if you want a rare burger, this is what you're going to have because it's still quite raw on the inside. So I'm actually going to cover this so it doesn't get too dark on the outside and put it back in for, like I said, about 15-20 minutes, and I'll check it again. Alright, so back in the middle rack, but we've covered it this time so that it will not brown, but it will get more done on the inside, kind of made like a tent. And now we're going to shut it up, set the timer for 15 minutes, and we'll check it again then. And maybe by then this will be mostly done. I'm going to actually stick it on the burner. The burner is not on, but the heat is coming out of there. Magnificent. Magnificent. Alright, y'all remember what I said about having to put that in the microwave? That's pretty much what we're going to have to do with that. But that's another story in just a minute. We are now going to open the meatloaf. Preferably without giving ourselves a steam burn on our faces. Oh yeah, that's much better, much better. See, it's still got a little bit of red running out of it, but I'm not too concerned because like I said, I'm going to put it in a frying pan. So we're going to let that cool. Turn off our oven because we are done cooking for tonight. Okay, it's now 4 o'clock in the morning. Alright, it's 3:53 in the morning. It might as well be 4 o'clock. So, I'm going to let these cool. That one just needs a few more minutes and I can take that out of there. And that one's still sizzling, so I'm not touching that one. Not happening. I'll be back in a minute. Alright, the good news is it was soft enough I could just poke it through the hole in the funnel. What I'm doing now is just scraping the sides and getting it all in there. The heat from the oven should let the rest of it melt down into the jar. Just make sure you keep scraping the sides. Get all that goodness into the jar. And again, less cleanup. There we go. We'll leave that there. Let these cool. And I'll be back in a minute. So, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I really hate waste. So, what I've done is I have emptied the meats into this plastic container, which does not have a lid. But that's quite okay because I'm going to reuse the bottom that I used to line the square pan. And I'm going to put it on top of this to cover it. I did scrape all the good stuff and strain it. Oh, wow. Sorry, I turned my light off. So, and I strained it. So we're just going to put it like this. And hopefully it won't fall back in again like it did last time. And we can get all that goodness out of there. So, there it is in the fridge to cool off. And like I said, that's probably going to be the burritos that we will probably eat for dinner tomorrow. I usually make meals for 3 or 4 days. And so I see that my daughter still has ramen here. She has 2 more down there. So that'll hold her for lunch for at least 3 days. Tomorrow we're going to deal with the chicken. I do not want my strawberries on top of chicken, even if it is in a bag. And that is actually some beef broth gravy that I already made. That'll probably go in the freezer tomorrow in a baggie. I still have a lot of meal prep to do, but it's after 4 o'clock and I'm tired, so I'm going to bed for 2 hours to take a nap before I get back up. All right, so I just emptied the drebs out of there, into there, put the lid back on, put it back in the fridge. All right, so I'm putting some soapy water into my greasy stuff here. I'm going to take this and turn it upside down inside that soapy water. Alrighty, so this is cooled off enough. I can stick it in the fridge. It says short grain, but I don't know what it is. Okay, so fridge is getting there. I still have boiled eggs in the bottom of there. That's just a loaf of bread. My garlic cloves, carrots, and what else do I have to cook? Oh, I still have to deal with all those chicken thighs right there. But that's for later today. Y'all have a great day. This is probably going to be a premiere. So right about now, y'all should start saying your goodbyes. So I don't have to take 10 minutes to say goodbye myself. I still have some cleaning to do. But I'm going to sadly let that wait until about 7 o'clock this morning. The dishwasher is running and my sink is quite full. So I'm going to let that dishwasher finish, wake up after a short nap, and get everything put together. So y'all have a great night, and part 2 of this video will probably be a little later today after the premiere, whatever day I do the premiere. And y'all have a great night. I hope this helps somebody. I will put the recipes down below. I'll also give some references to the Make Ahead and Freezer meal clubs that I am in. They have helped me immensely. I have 3 special needs kids, which require a lot of doctor's appointments and therapy appointments, and things get crazy, okay? So meal planning and meal prep ahead of time is immensely helpful for somebody like me. Also, it's gardening time. So you homesteaders, you gardeners, you know it's a busy time. So why not take a day, get the kids involved? Usually my kids would be involved, but my youngest has moderate severe autism, and she was very agitated today. It looked like it was going to storm all day, and it didn't. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. All my children are very sensitive to weather changes and barometric pressures and stuff like that. So that could have been what was going on. I just don't know. She's not nonverbal. She just does not use her verbal skills to communicate things like, oh, my head hurts. If she turns out all the lights, we know her head hurts and we're sitting in the dark. So that's pretty much how my life runs. I think that was it. I will put the links below for the Freezer Meals 101 Club and the Freezer Family Club as well. I also just got a new book about, I think it's freezer to cooker or something, but that's for a mail call, so you'll probably be seeing that before you see the premiere. All right, y'all have a great night, or in my case, a great nap and busy day. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.